Okay, comic book review time. Somebody in the comments recommended that I check out this book right here. See if you can see it. Wildcats #1. This is the reboot. And they started this reboot, I think, actually, I got DC's website pulled up. It was November 8th of 2022. Now, the Wildcats, there's been attempts to reboot this book a couple of times. Obviously, it didn't quite work out because here we are again. So does this one work? Will it work? I can't say whether it will succeed or not. That's hard to say. Some people like certain things, some people don't. I enjoyed the book, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a hit with the fans. There are some things about the story that's slightly different from the original book. Void doesn't necessarily look how she did in the original book. She's in some kind of spacesuit, which is, I don't really know why yet. I haven't got that far. I bought issue #1. My local comic book shop didn't have 2, 3, and 4. So I bought issue 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, I believe. I believe there's an issue somewhere in there I'm missing. I don't mind reading books out of order. I'm kind of weird that way. So here's the thing. You probably want to know, is the book any good? I'm sure if you're watching this video, you've probably either already watched a video review of the book, or you've seen panels, or you've listened to someone else, or you've talked to someone else about the book. I enjoyed the book. That doesn't mean, again, everybody will. They seem to be really focused on really building this story, which was actually an encouraging thing about reading this book. Whether it will take off, how far this will go, whether it will go the way of a lot of DC properties where it starts good and then they just get rid of it, and for seemingly no reason at all. I don't know if this book is still running. I need to check. But after Dark Knight's Metal, there was a series of books introduced by Jim Lee. I think it was a series of characters introduced by him. One of them was Silencer. I thought that was a very good book. Also, Damage. Damage was actually good. It was kind of a ripoff. Not kind of. It was a ripoff of Incredible Hulk. I can go ahead and admit that. But I still enjoyed the story. Look, comic book characters take inspiration from other comic book characters. We see this all the time between Marvel, DC, and in some other books. So that doesn't necessarily get under my skin. But I digress. Getting back to what I was talking about here. What I was getting to is, I don't know if Silencer is still going or Damage. I think they ended those runs, which I was kind of sad because I thought these things had the potential to build. Now with Wildcats, I don't know how long they're going to give this a go. I think what happens, especially nowadays, and this is probably maybe an issue with some of the bigger content houses, sometimes it takes time for something to catch on. It's not right away. And I understand they're a business. If they're not making money, they're not just going to continually gamble on this thing that's not bringing them any cash. I understand that. I get it. But sometimes I think that dynamic really eliminates their ability to run with something long enough to allow it to catch its footing, if you know what I mean. There's certain comic books I read in the past that didn't grab me right away, but something said, just hold on, this might be interesting. And I was glad I did. It got good over time. I think this reboot of the Wildcats is good, not perfect, not without flaw, but I think it definitely can grab my attention as time goes on even more. I think it has that potential. I read issue #5. I think this is where Warblade was introduced. And he was one of my favorite Wildcats characters. I explained before, Wildcats was one of my favorite teams. Look, my memory is not like some comic book pros. Some of these comic book guys really impress me because they can read a book and they can memorize things from like years ago, like in very good detail. My memory doesn't work like that. As much as I love Wildcats, there's a bunch about Wildcats I don't remember, and there's some things I do remember. From what I do remember, this reboot isn't bad. I'm going to say this is a comic book worth buying if you're interested. What I'm going to do, I have some of the covers pulled up, and I also have a Bleeding Cool article that actually has a bunch of the panels so you can see the art. And like I said, if art is not good, that really throws me off when it comes to reading a book. So these are some of the covers. So this is I have this number 1 right here. I don't have 2, 3, or 4, but I do have number 5 and number 6. I wonder why these are locked out on this website, because there's actually more issues. They've gone up to issue number 10. The newest issue has Batman on the cover. Let me see if maybe no, they seem to have those locked out. I'm not really sure what that's about. That's interesting. So anyway, I'll go to this Bleeding Cool. I don't know if this is an article. I don't know really what was going on here. I read a little bit of it and it was just awkward. So I'm not going to do that, but I do want to show you some of the panels. I think DC is doing a much better job with matching artists with stories than Marvel is doing in the current moment. I've seen some Marvel artwork that, in my humble opinion, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't terrible, but it just didn't match like some of the characters. But this was good, of course. You know, you have the story of the Wildcats, like the backstory. So in this first panel, it explains millions of years ago, an alien race known as the Cherubim fled their dying planet, and there's a war between them and the Demonites. And really, all around, I always thought Wildcats was a very good team, very good story that just never really had enough time to build. And I think that's a problem that maybe it's just a corporate problem. As I explained earlier, they have to make a profit. So if something doesn't make a profit right away, they're just gone from it. And that's any company. I get it. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. But anyway, I wanted to show you some of the art. There's Grifter, Zealot. And again, the art, I believe, fit the story. It was good art. And it's funny because art styles are very, very signature. Like if you saw something from Wills Portacio or a Brett Booth, you would know immediately. There's a certain, I'm not going to say they're the same, but they would be, in my humble opinion, in that same vein of art style. And this is a different kind of art style, but I definitely like it. And I thought it fit. It was good enough. I'll tell you this much. It was good enough that after opening the book, the cover didn't necessarily grab me. But when I opened the book and started reading, I was like, okay, I think I like this. And look, it gets kind of dark. I like it. Some other people from the DC universe show up. And this is probably the one thing I like about this reboot of Wildcats is they're fully incorporated into the DC universe. So you see a really good Superman fight in this book. I'm not going to give it away if you want to read the book, but I was like, okay, this is not bad. This is not bad at all. As a matter of fact, was the Superman fight in this book? No, actually, it was in book 5. I take that back. It was in book 5. That's where the Superman fight was. As a matter of fact, let me look through it right now while I'm talking to you about this and make sure I'm not lying to you. But I like the fact that you get to intermingle some of the greater DC universe in with the Wildcats. And honestly, the darkness of the Wildcats, like their backstory, I think it actually fits. Yeah, it was in book 5 that Superman fight happened. Pretty interesting. The darkness of the Wildcat story actually matches well with the DC universe, and that was something that I didn't really think about. So, yeah, if you're thinking about picking up this book, at least issue number 1, I would say issue number 1 is worth picking up. I don't think you will be disappointed. I think this is a book that you will buy, be pleased with, and maybe go on to buy some more Wildcats reboot books. Now, whether DC will continue this run, whether they will end this run, that remains to be seen. A lot of these comic book companies now, especially DC, I've noticed DC is really interesting about the way they start a series and then abruptly end a series. And I'm sure it's linked to money, like I explained earlier. But I hope this does well. I genuinely enjoyed this book, and I enjoyed issue number 5. I got some more issues that I'm going to read, and then hopefully I can find the issues that I'm missing and read those as well. But if you are interested in this book, if you grew up in the 90s like myself, 80s and 90s, and you remember the launch of Image comic books and you enjoyed Wildcats, I think you'll enjoy this book as well.